Hey, this is a response to Piero on the metaphysics and a priori, a posteriori, blah. This may in fact be one of my last videos on the subject. I'm getting a little bit bored of it now. So, Piero, before I begin responding to the last video that you made, I still want to say you're strawmanning me. Seriously strawmanning me. Not only strawmanning the position that I stand in, but what metaphysics is. You mischaracterize it left, right, and center, so I want to address that. Secondly, again, you didn't respond to the criticisms which I actually did raise, which, again, were twofold. Firstly, a priori distinctions are those things which are true solely in virtue of their definition or by the application of logic. Now, note here that I'm not saying we need to learn how to use logic or learn how to talk or have brains or anything like that. My distinction is simple and it's quite clear. So, secondly, let me actually get on to what you did say in the video. Okay, you raised 2 points, but they were complete non sequiturs because you mischaracterized metaphysics altogether. You think that there's one view that metaphysics has, which everyone agrees on, and that's the metaphysics. And yeah, that's not the truth. That's not the case at all. There's so much literature on the subject that you and Matt were talking about. People standing one position and another, and people just having completely ridiculous positions, but you know, they're aware that they're engaging in a metaphysical debate. And many of them, most of them, don't believe in any spooky Neoplatonic sort of stuff. But if they do, they've got to argue, they've got to convince me. So the way that I see it, before I begin responding to the points that you raised, is that metaphysics is trying to narrow down the assumptions that we have to accept in order to explain everything. So trying to get our ontological primitives as small as we can, and the sort of logic that we'll just accept at face value as small as we possibly can. That's what metaphysics is. It's nothing spooky. So for you to say metaphysics is wrong is to say that assumptions are wrong. And that is of course completely contradictory because that's an assumption, blah blah blah. So let me actually go into the points that you raised. You raised the A equals A thing. I want to make 2 points about this. Firstly, you mischaracterize what A equals A actually is, which is, you give the river example. So I'll cash it out in a bit more detail. I go to the river at T1, and let's call this thing that we refer to as river as entity X. Right? I go back at T2, let's call this thing entity Y. I also refer to it as the river. So I could say that X and Y were different, and I'd have a very strict notion of identity in mind, or I could say that X and Y were the same because they were part of the continual process, they had necessity of origins, and there's so much literature on the subject, and you think metaphysics just stands one side and holds that these entities are different things entirely. Not the case, not the case. There's no consensus view on that, and even if there was, it wouldn't prove that metaphysics is wrong. A equals A isn't to say that X and Y are the same things, it's to say that X is X. So a thing is itself, and you know, rejecting that is that not a good idea. It's really I can't even conceive of rejecting that. I don't know what it would possibly entail. I can't even think about it coherently. So again, there's a vast array of literature on this identity subject, but most interestingly between a guy called Sal Kripke and a guy called David Lewis. They stand on different sides of the debate, and they have a really good opposing views on the subject. But I think the fact that you think metaphysics stands on one side means that you don't really know what it is. You know, if you'd looked into the metaphysics of identity and essentialism, then you know you could see the arguments for yourself. But I don't think you have done. I think you've concluded there is no metaphysics without really looking into the issues at stake here. Secondly, you raise another point. Are these a priori truths in true of worlds that don't exist? I don't think there are worlds that don't exist. That's what your assumption's based on. You say, okay, so there are these worlds that don't exist. Where are your truths there? I don't think that there are any worlds that don't exist. I don't believe in non-existent objects. And your assumption depends on non-existent objects in order for you to expect me to ascribe a priori truths of non-existent worlds, which I'm not going to. I don't believe in impossible worlds or impossible objects or things like that. And on the notion of possible objects, I'm divided. But conversation of such is in itself metaphysical. I've got a few videos on necessity of existent and non-existent objects, and you know, I do go into detail on that. I still think that you're seriously mischaracterizing what metaphysics is, though. It's not transcendental, and you yourself are engaged in the discussion. So until, I don't know, you address the points that I've actually raised, I think I'm going to just be quiet on this issue. I think I've made my point, and I'm getting a little bit bored now. So, peace.